Gavoor. I want to talk about managing inventories in the OM5 book. And we want to explain the importance of inventory. And some of this will be overlap from the online textbook as well. Describe major characteristics that impact that, talk about ABC inventory analysis, which we didn't talk about in the other book. I'll look at how a fixed order quantity inventory model, the basic EOQ model, works. Economic order quantity is what that means. Explain how a fixed period inventory system works. And describe how to apply the single period inventory model. So some of this preamble is overlapping with the other book, but from a slightly different perspective. And there's no really one right answer to inventory. So it's about planning, coordinating, and controlling. I always say we have to have the right product in the right place at the right time in the right quantities. The right quantities is obviously the finished good inventory. So we're also talking about you have to have the right amount of raw materials or packaging materials or semi-finished goods that you purchase in the right places at the right time in the right quantities in order to be able to produce the right goods in the right quantities at the right time in order to have the right inventory levels at the right places at the right time. So we're talking about components, parts, subassemblies, we're talking about supplies and tools, we're talking about replacement parts, and any other things that are needed as materials to meet the customer needs and wants. This book breaks it up into 4 types: raw materials, component parts, subassemblies, and supplies. That some people just all call that all raw materials, but it's all of the things that you buy from outside or maybe get delivered from even another plant in your own entity. Like Ford doesn't source engines necessarily from the outside, they source it from a sister plant. Work in process inventory, as we talked about last time, is when those goods get transferred into the factory. The raw materials get transferred into the factory, and then they officially get designated as work in process through an actual transaction in the ERP system. The entire time they're in the factory, everything is considered work in process until it's transferred out of the factory into the finished good warehouse. Then it's officially available and considered a finished good by the company. So that's the finished good. And then they talk about safety stock, which is the amount of inventory that you keep over and above the amount that you think you need in case the demand varies or the usage varies more than you expected. You have a buffer, a safety stock to tide you over. Again, both books seem to neglect the very harsh reality of obsolete and slow-moving inventory, which can account for 30 to 50% of inventories in some consumer good companies. I guess they don't cover that because you never plan for it. It's just a ugly reality sometimes. We talked about this role of inventory in the value chain or the supply process. And this is the area of raw materials. This is where suppliers, be it an internal supplier like Ford's engine plant or Ford's transmission plants, giving those to the assembly, or it could be the companies that make the seats and the steering wheels and the entertainment systems and all the hoses and tubes and tires and brake systems that go into an automobile that are outside third-party suppliers. The other inputs other than the raw materials, components, and supplies are people, information, and of course the raw materials are the physical good. Those goods go into a factory and are transformed by land, labor, capital, and information resources into something more valuable, that finished good, the product of the company. So it's raw materials until it gets transferred into the factory, and then it's work in process. Then when it's transferred there to some distribution center, or as soon as it leaves the factory walls, loaded onto a truck to go to the either a distribution center or directly to the customer, then it's considered a finished good. Repair and replacement parts. That's post-sale services. And of course, obviously, an automotive entity, that would be kind of critical because they provide warranties, and other entities there's no such, it doesn't really matter so long, especially for a throwaway product. So when we manage inventories in global supply chains, so we have to have good technology, processes, and information systems. Where there used to be a planning organization in every geographic place a company like Procter & Gamble, Colgate, or Lever would do business, right now most of those companies have gone to one shared service organization globally, with a lot less people and supported and amplified by their ERP system that is able to do global planning from one location, sometimes in Central America, sometimes in a neutral place like Switzerland, and sometimes even from the United States, depending on the company and how they choose to organize. So purchasing must focus on global sourcing and total system cost. They want to ensure that quality, delivery, performance, and technical support are there from their suppliers. And they want to seek new suppliers and products that are able to be of greater potential to the company, and maybe you're doing more research. So we've talked about procurement in the online book pretty well. So environmentally preferable purchasing. Well, this is another thing if you're talking about being sustainable, and your carbon footprint and all of those things that you want to make sure that you take those into account when working with suppliers. It's not just about the lowest cost. So inventory management decision. What's the right time to order items from a supplier or to trigger production in a plant? And what quantity should we order each time this is done? And what quantity should we manufacture a good each time it's done? So here's the categories of inventory costs. You have your ordering costs or setup costs. If you're ordering from an outside supplier, it's the amount of time and effort, money, and man hours you spend in placing an order. Now you think that's relatively easy to do, but think about this. If you have to go buy a textbook on Amazon, you could do that in a matter of minutes if you know the textbook and go to the right site and place the order and then it gets delivered to you. But have you ever tried to book a flight on online resources? That can be very quick if you find the right flight, luckily, quickly, or you're all over the place checking, let's check American, let's check United, let's check one of the travel websites, let's check this, let's check that, and you're trying to hammer something together that's affordable to you and fits your schedule. That can take you 3-4 hours. So placing an order, the time and the time of the people that work in a purchasing department, let's assume they're making an average of $70,000 a year, and whatever that hourly rate is goes into that cost. It's probably not significant, but it's a part. Inventory holding cost. Inventory sitting in your warehouse, whether it's a raw material or a finished good, pays rent, has to pay rent. That warehouse costs you a certain amount a year. And it's in rent and wages of the people that work there, and the overhead of the administrative staff that works in the warehouse, the taxes that they pay, all the utility costs, all of those things go into it. And if you look at the average inventory at any given time, what is the average inventory in that warehouse for a year? Those items pay their proportion of that rent. So inventory holding costs. What's a shortage cost or stockout costs? One of the biggest costs with inventory. General management sales gets mad, and general management gets mad at you if you don't have inventory at all and the salespeople sell something. That really frosts them. Because what happens? I've taken the effort to make a sale. And gee whiz, you manufacturing people, you didn't have the goods to supply to fill that order. So we had to cancel the order, and now I got to go and resell that amount to make my monthly nut or quota. That's a lost sales. That really irritates people. The other thing that irritates people, but it takes longer to irritate them, is too much inventory. If you have too much inventory, you've consumed. Inventory takes cash. You've got to suck up companies' cash to make inventory, either to buy it in terms of raw materials, or if you transform those raw materials with added cash dollars into finished goods, and you have too much inventory, your cash is down and your inventory is up. And usually, finance finds out about you having too much inventory and it bothers them, and then all of a sudden they're inventory experts and trying to help you reduce the amount of inventory you have. Companies have all shut down production in this COVID thing because, especially companies that aren't selling, aren't planning, have a product that is not necessary to be quarantined at home. So like an auto sale. Auto companies are not producing anything because who's buying a car right now? Who needs to buy a car right now? So you have that shortage cost that you have to look at if you're out of stock. And then the unit cost. How much did the thing cost you to buy or produce? All right, so inventory characteristics. Number of items that you have, nature of the demand, the time, number and duration of time periods, what you call lead time and stockouts. And every item that you keep track of, and this is part of general acceptable, the good accounting practices. And you've got to keep track of everything. So everything has to have a unique number. It's called a stock keeping unit, or SKU. If you look at any product you buy at a store, it has an SKU number on it. It's the barcode on the back and the number at the very bottom of it. And you can't have two products with the same number. It will just confound things. So every product has to have a unique SKU number within the four walls of your entire company. So we keep track of that. And then the finance people want to make sure that if you think you have 100 of this item in storage location ABC, there are in fact 100 of those items in storage location ABC. There's rarely more. Sometimes there's more. You might go there and say, oh, there's 110. Where do these 10 come from? And you're happy because it increases the value of your inventory. It's like finding money laying on the street. More often than not, there's less. If there's a discrepancy, it's because there's less inventory in storage location ABC. There's only 95. Where did the other 5 go? A couple things. It could be they call it shrinkage. And it could be theft. And companies definitely have to watch out for that. But it also could be an oops. Someone in a warehouse inadvertently ran a lift truck or damaged the goods somehow. And then most like a little kid in their house when they break a vase on their mother's end table, they look around. Did I get caught? Did mom hear it? No one's coming. I think I'm safe. They pick up all the pieces of the broken vase and throw it in the trash bin. And then mom says, who broke the vase? And everybody goes, I don't know. What vase? Was there a vase? And the same thing happens in factories and warehouses. I've seen it happen. If you're not careful and you run into something and you destroy the product, if you can throw it away without getting caught, that's another way you get shrinkage. All right. We've talked about independent and dependent demand in the other lecture, so you know what that is. Static demand and dynamic demand are rarely do we see static demand where you use the same amount every time period. Now, there's probably examples where that happens. More likely than not, there's a varied demand or a dynamic demand because the demand varies over time. And a demand is either the demand of raw materials from the factory or the demand of your finished goods from your customer base. So, number and duration of time periods. Firms are concerned with planning inventory requirements over extended time periods. And there's two approaches. You look at single time period or multiple time periods. Walmart, when they plan their inventory and they plan what they want to have in their stores, looks at it, they do it by months, they do it by SKU, and they look out 18 months when they do a forecast. So if it's March now and we have a firm forecast for April and a firm planning for April. They're also looking at not only a year from April, April 2021, but October of 2021 as the 18th month. So that's, it's just how you look at things. The lead time. The lead time is always, it's how long it takes you to decide you need to do something and that something actually happens. So there's a lead time in how long it takes you to ship something from point A to point B. We decide we have to ship something from point A to point B. So by the time I decide I have to ship it, and I organize for the trucks, and by the time it gets to point B and is acknowledged as a receipt there, what is that time? That's a lead time. I decide that I'm going to make something in my factory tomorrow. How long ago did I have to decide that in order to have the preparations all in place? Is it a 1-day lead time? Is it a 2-day lead time, 3-day lead time? Do I have all the raw materials? All that kind of thing. So when I decide to produce something till the time it's actually produced in the quantities that I asked for, that's a lead time. When I decide I need to order something from a supplier, so I decide today I need to order it. I place the order. From deciding I need to place the order till the goods arrive at the designated location that they were shipped to, that's a lead time. Stockouts, you can back order things, but I think a lot of companies have moved away from back orders. Maybe not so much as now when we have a run on toilet paper and paper towels and disinfectants, but for the most part, large consumer good companies, if something is out of stock that a customer orders, they just cancel that from the order. And then the customer, who will probably order again next week, will order it again. And the company has faith that their production capabilities and planning capabilities will have that item in stock the next time the customer orders. And the customer will probably order more next time. That's what makes this COVID period special, because all of a sudden the demand shifted dramatically, probably faster than companies could easily meet that demand and meet that change in demand. So are you going to have back orders or not back orders? Most consumer goods companies have moved from having back orders to just canceling it and doing it the next time. It is a lost sale. It is a lost sale. But you have to work to get that sale again. So that's what happens. If you have to cancel and you risk the customer buying from somebody else. So if, it's more meaningful if I'm selling as an individual to a store and they don't buy my product because I don't have it, but someone else's product is a substitute, they might buy that. But for the most part, when you're talking about consumer goods companies, it's your own SKU and it's competing against others. They buy some stuff from you, they buy the competing product from others, and but you don't want to be, if you lose sales too much, you risk being out of stock on the shelf in the stores, and then that really upsets people, because then the consumer has no choice but to buy from your competitor. All right, ABC analysis. All inventory is not the same. There are fast movers and slow movers, and they've classified them as ABC inventory. Some people have D and E as well, and F, and Super A, but basically it's an ABC system. A items are the large dollar value but relatively small percent of total items. All consumer goods tend to have this. 10 to 30% of your items sell 60 to 80% of your total dollar value. Well, hey, if that's the case, if I have 10% of my items, 20% of my items responsible for 80% of my sales, I think I'm going to really focus on making sure that I have those items in the right quantities in the right place at the right time. The C items are called your dogs and cats. They are the ones that sell very little. It might be up to 60-70% of your items, but they only count for 5% of your sales. So you ask the question, why do you even have those? Well, it's a complex system. Marketing people are very reluctant to get rid of any SKUs in their portfolio because they wonder where the sales will come from. Manufacturing people tend to think that, well, they'll just buy more of the A items. Are you kidding me? And B items are between A and C. So you have A, B, and C, and mostly they're saying worry about the A items a lot. Don't worry so much about the C items. You're probably producing the A items all the time. You're probably producing the C items once every month, maybe every 2 months, maybe every 3 months, depending on how small their volume is. And the B items you're probably producing once or twice a month. But there's another kind of inventory too, slow and obsolete. SL for slow, OB for obsolete, SLOB. And it's a great little acronym for it. Slow means that you have more than 3 months of inventory. In other words, the stock of inventory you have takes 3 months. If you don't produce any more and you don't add to that inventory, it will take you 3 months to go through that inventory, either by sales or by consumption in the factory. So slow is not something you want to do. It's probably a product that you either overbought for or is a product that's in decline and probably ought to be cut anyway. Obsolete is the kind of inventory that you have that you cannot use. It's no longer saleable. It's no longer saleable because it's not in your catalog of things to sell, or there's some expiration that limits you from selling it, or it's a co-logoed product like Disney comes out with a movie and you have a pen or a lunchbox or whatever it is, a notebook that has that movie logo on it. Disney is very particular. You cannot sell any before a specific date and you cannot sell any after a specific date. So if you have inventory for that good after that specific date, you cannot sell it or you'll be sued by Disney and no longer be able to make their logoed products. So people pay very close attention to that. Fixed quantity system. The same amount is ordered every time. All right. So let's say, I don't know. The order quantity can be any quantity of the product, and it does not have to be economically determined. Some of these, we figure some of those Dollar Shave Clubs and those kinds of things that do automatic replenishment, figure you're going to use 1 blade a week, and every month we'll send you 4 blades, or every 2 months we'll send you 8 blades, and every 5 months we'll sell you another handle, or send you another handle, or maybe shaving cream, and however you use it. So that's a fixed order quantity system. Companies love that if you can get it, but most companies don't have that kind of thing. How do we manage inventory? There's kinds of inventory. Your inventory position is, what do I have on hand? What's in my factory, in my warehouse right now on the shelf? It doesn't matter if it's raw or packed, but now we're starting to think mostly of finished goods. All right, what's on hand? How much do I have out there? Are there any orders that are scheduled receipts? In other words, I've placed orders for it, or it's in production in the factory, or it's coming from overseas someplace, and it's in transit. So it's already in the works. It's already in the system. We call those scheduled receipts. And then you subtract any back orders. So your inventory position is not just what you have on hand, but also your scheduled receipts minus your back orders. Most people ignore the back orders and look at scheduled receipts. So if I'm thinking about ordering inventory, one thing you want to look at, if I'm ordering all my product from China, in other words, I don't produce anything and I buy everything from China. Well, usually you look at 1/3 of your inventory is in production, 1/3 of your inventory is in transit, and 1/3 of your inventory is in your hands, available to sell to customers. You usually have, you'd like to have a month worth of inventory, to cover your customers. Well, and it takes about a month to get by ocean the goods from China to the United States, and it takes another month for them to produce your goods, if you're ordering to their production planning process. So you have your inventory position is 3 months of inventory at any given time. So you got to pay attention to that when you're ordering. So actually, if you're ordering from a company in China, and right now I have, it's March and I have X amount of inventory, let's pretend it's a normal month and not the COVID-19 month. And then I have a month's worth of product on the water that will hit, probably the shores the 20th of March and be delivered to me April 1st, ready to sell as my month of inventory in March gets depleted. That I had March 1 is kind of near the end. And then they've loaded that month. The next month after that, which would be May, on a ship at the end of March, and it gets shipped. It takes a 3-week ocean voyage to get to the U.S., and there we have it. And then you ordered for June to the production process in your supplier. So that's how this kind of inventory positioning thing works. So if the inventory varies, how do we know when to order something? I mean, again, toilet paper with COVID-19 is a huge thing. Usually you wait, you see, oh, gee, I'm down to like 2 rolls of toilet paper. I think I should put it on my shopping list and get it. And 2 rolls is your safety stock, right? You say, it probably takes me a week or 2 weeks to use, depending on how many people you have in your house. It could take 2 days if you have a lot of people, to run through that much toilet paper. But if I get down to like 2-3 rolls, that's my safety stock. Put it on the list, make a mental note of it. Next time I go to the store, yep, I got to buy some toilet paper, and you buy however much you buy normally, and you've replenished. So the trigger point is when I get down to that. If toilet paper is a great example because that's not something you want to run out of. AA batteries, AAA batteries, you could run out of and not kill yourself, or not feel completely defeated. All right, you should be laughing at that a little bit. All right, so that's when that happens. So summary of a fixed system, a quantity system. What's your ordering decision rule? What's my, when do I trigger a new order? And I order the same amount every time. So every time I go, I buy 12 rolls of toilet paper. I get down to 2, I buy, I got to buy some more. And then I go out and buy 12 more. And every time I buy it, I buy 12. That's not the case. So fixed order system, quantity system under stable demand. If here's your reorder point, and if the demand is always kind of the same, it always goes up to your inventory always goes up to the same level, and it works so well, right? Here's across the x-axis is time. Here's your inventory level. So I start the time period, whatever it might be. I've just bought my stock. And I start drawing it down. And notice it's not necessarily a line. I don't use any, and then I use some, and then I don't use any, and I use some, and I don't use any. And it seems like the amount they use seems to be almost a fixed quantity. But it does vary. When I get to the reorder point, say, oops, I know that right here, this is the lead time that I want to be able to, I better get some more. So you go and you order, and you just put in your mind that I got to order this much. And if you've done it from someplace that ships it to you, like let's say it's Amazon, and they're going to deliver to you in 3 days, this lead time is 3 days, and then 3 days your toilet paper comes, and now your inventory position is here. But over the time you've used that amount, and then the queue that you ordered just goes up to here, and the same thing starts over and over again. When you have highly variable demand, it means, you might use up get to your reorder point quickly. Sometimes it may take you longer. Sometimes it may go really quickly, but the fixed system kind of works if you design it properly. Now, if it goes real quick for some reason, like toilet paper, all of a sudden, here's what happened. The demand became very steep, and all of a sudden people are ordering inside the lead time, less than the lead time, and then not getting all the stock that they want. And then therefore that amplifies back to the factory that was planning and using a lead time for production based on what had been normal for them, and then they're having the same issue. So these things can amplify. They call it the bullwhip effect, actually. The most important inventory model out there is called the economic order quantity model. It was from 1915, and it was Ford W. Harris was a guy that did it in the Industrial Magazine. So it's a classic economic model that minimizes total cost. The fixed quantity system doesn't necessarily minimize cost. So the key assumption in this model, and all models have some assumptions, we're only considering one item, one SKU. The entire order quantity arrives at the inventory at one time. So it's instantaneous arrival of the inventory. Key assumptions. The types of costs that are relevant. Order setup and inventory costs. No stockouts are allowed, and the demand for the item is deterministic and continuous over time. In other words, you know for a fact what your demand is going to be for a whole year. And the lead time is constant. You know, when I first sat in a class like this when I was a senior undergraduate taking a graduate level manufacturing planning class, inventory and manufacturing planning, when we looked at this model and the first thing they said, we know what the demand is. I'm like, wait, how do they know what the demand is? In the future, this is the Achilles heel of all this, and little did I know that I would be making an entire career of dealing exactly with that Achilles heel most of the time. I mean, it's not like we don't know what the demand is. I mean, it's like Coca-Cola doesn't change dramatically year to year, even though carbonated beverages have gone down year to year. There can be gradual trends. Notice that in the cost of the items doesn't matter. What? You're purchasing some, but I know what the yearly demand is. Usually for a year, I've negotiated a cost with my suppliers, or I've negotiated a standard cost with the factory. It tells me what the standard cost of that item they're producing for a finished good might be. So I took demand times those costs, and that's the cost I'm going to spend no matter how many orders I place, and no matter what the quantity is. So the only thing that really matters is the order or setup cost and the inventory holding cost. That's the only thing I can control by how much I order and how often I order. Pure and simple. So, cycle inventory. If you produce, or if you order an amount, and now the amount we're going to be talking about is Q for quantity. The average inventory is going to be the maximum inventory plus the minimum inventory divided by 2. The average cycle inventory is called Q over 2. That's how much if you place that order, and your factory produces Q every month for you, whenever you place an order, or you order from a supplier in an amount of Q, your average cycle inventory is going to be Q over 2. Especially if your minimum inventory is 0. Here's a very nice picture of this. So I order some inventory. Boom. It goes all the way up to Q. And I meter it down so nicely. And the average inventory is Q over 2. When it gets to 0, boom, I get Q more. And you get this beautiful sawtooth picture, which only works in concept in a class and a presentation like this. The economic order quantity model uses 2 things. Cost of storing the unit in inventory for 1 year, CH. Sometimes they give you the CH. Other times they give you the annual inventory holding charge expressed as a % of total cost. So now I look at the cost of the item and I apply like a 2% to that, and that becomes my holding cost. So they either give you this holding cost or you calculate it using some percentage. And it's based on what the cost of the inventory item is. So annual inventory holding cost is the average inventory times the annual holding cost. The average inventory is 1/2 times the quantity that you're ordering times the CH holding cost. So it depends. If we're talking about ordering costs, we have the demand, the annual demand, and Q, if you're going to order Q at a time, you have to place D divided by Q orders per year. And we're looking at a yearly basis all the time. So the annual ordering cost is D divided by Q, that's the number of orders you're going to place, times C sub O, which is the cost of ordering, of placing an order. Now, the annual cost, the total cost is this. Total cost equals 1/2 the quantity times the holding cost. So that's your holding cost, plus D divided by Q, number of orders per year, times the ordering cost. So that becomes your total order cost. And I'm trying to minimize that. I could add to that D times Q again, but remember, you're going to spend that anyway, so let's not even include it in the model. Solve for Q. Algebra, 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 you end up with this. Your economic order quantity, or Q star, which we'll talk about, is 2 times the annual demand times the ordering cost divided by the holding cost. And you take the square root of that. So if you have a reorder point, so capital letters usually mean annual. So big D is the annual demand. Little d is the daily demand. Because remember, we're talking about annual. Now the lead time can be, sometimes they use the little l, but the lead time can be this is the demand rate, and it's either by week or day or something like that, times the lead time. So your lead time demand is there. It's called R for reorder point. When demand is uncertain, using EOQ base. Now, the thing about the EOQ model, and if we go back to that, I forgot to tell you, this is the base on which all inventory models have grown in the past 105 years. You could add components that you can expand and make the components more complicated by adding reorder points, lead times that are fixed, lead times that have a normal distribution with a particular mean and standard deviation. You could add a perishable factor to inventory, because obviously if you buy groceries and fresh produce, it doesn't have a long shelf life. Some electronics also can be considered perishable inventory. What's the value of an iPhone 4 in your inventory if you still had one? It would be almost worthless. It would be like a spoiled product. So the models get very complicated, and we're just looking at this very, very easy model here. So if we want a desired service level in a safety stock, so I want to add some more inventory to say, gee, I don't know if the demand is actually going to be, or the lead times are going to have any variation in them. So I might want to add some extra stock just to cover myself. So now we're talking about the lead time. Maybe the lead time varies. You don't know. Is it going to be a snowstorm? If it's coming by truck from, a couple states away? Is there going to be a tremendous rainstorm? What if, really low probability the truck has a breakdown or an accident? All of that kind of stuff. So mu times L is the average demand during lead time. Sigma sub L is the standard deviation of demand during lead time. Z is the number of standard deviations necessary to achieve an acceptable level of service. So Z times sigma L sub L represents the amount of safety stock. So this is what you're going to order. This is how calculating the reorder point during that's the demand during lead time. So when I get to that R, that's what I get. But I'm going to add this much more inventory depending on what percentage of the normal distribution is accumulative I want to cover. So basically your customer service level is, you can't get 100% because you'd have to carry an infinite amount of stock, which in this model, which doesn't make any sense. You have to just cover too much stock to guarantee 100% customer service all the time. So most people look at like 90, anywhere from 95 to 99.5 or something like that. Suppose that mu and sigma are the mean and standard deviation of demand for some time interval t. If the distributions of demand for all time intervals are identical to and independent of each other, then mu sub L is mu t times L, and sigma L is sigma t times the square root of L. We'll just give you these. Don't worry about this other part. So you have to do a little bit of, you're going to have to use Excel a little bit, or use the models in the textbook to do these problems on this. Because you just actually put the numbers into the model and it spits out an answer, and you have to be able to interpret the answer. So fixed period system inventory. What's the time interval between reviews, and what's the replenishment level that you have? So inventory position is checked only at fixed intervals of time rather than on a continuous basis. The EOQ provides the best economic time interval for establishing an optimal policy in this fixed period. Under the model assumptions, the time is Q star divided by D. Optimal replenishment level without safety stock is this D times T plus L, where D is the average demand per period, L is the time in the same units, and M is the demand during lead time plus review period. So if we summarize this system, the ordering decision rule is place a new order every T periods where the order quantity is at the time T. QT equals M minus IPT, and IPT is the inventory position at the time of review T. I don't think we have a problem on this one, but we covered it anyway. So you're placing you never get to that M amount, but you're always ordering it when at the fixed period. You're looking at periods, IP1, IP2, IP3, and then you decide what the inventory is and how much you order. So they're going to order that much. So when it gets down to here, the order comes in after the lead time, it goes up to that much. And then it gets down to here, and you say, oh, we really want to get back up to this level. And then when the lead time comes, I get that much more, and I never really ever get to M unless it goes exactly to 0. Now, the next one, we see that, again, the draw off the inventory is steeper. So at inventory period 3, when we look at that period to place the next order, is going to be here, because, notice that the time is fixed, but now it drew quicker from here to here. And sometimes the peak changes, right? So I'm not sure I'm entirely sold on this system. You get here, now the lead time is not long enough. The demand during this lead time is steeper, so you go out of stock for a while, and now you come here and you order this much. So when you get here, now you want to order from here to here. So oftentimes a picture helps you understand how these things work. So managing fixed period inventory systems. We compute the safety stock over the period T plus L, and replenishment level is computed as M equals mu T plus L plus Z sigma T plus L. So mu T plus L is mu of T plus this T plus L period, and sigma T plus L is sigma T plus the square root of t, and I think that square root extends over the L. So single period inventory model is something that I think I've assigned some problems for. This is a seasonal demand. This is called the newsboy problem. It's called the department store problem, where it's the beginning of the season. Right now, how many pink polo shirts do we order in each size for Brooks Brothers or Joseph A. Banks or wherever men's store you think I shop at? And, we've ordered all those. We got to place the order for the entire spring, summer season. And however many they ordered, they're always wrong. That's why at the end of the season, you can buy them for a fraction of the price. So it applies to situations in which one order is placed for a good in anticipation of a selling season. The reason it's called the newsboy problem is I buy newspapers, I order newspapers to sell tomorrow. The newspaper comes. There's a penalty for newspapers that I don't sell. I still have to pay for them, even though I didn't sell them. And if something big happens and the newspapers sell quickly, I might not have enough newspapers to cover me, so I lose sales that way. At the end of the period, the product is either sold out or there's a surplus. And most clothing stores generally end up with surplus of things. So the marginal economic analysis compares, you look at the cost or loss of ordering one additional item with the cost or loss of not ordering one additional item. So C sub S is the cost of an item of overestimating demand. Cost per item of overestimating demand represents the loss of ordering one additional item and finding that it cannot be sold. So it's the discount you have to sell it at or the scrap that you have to scrap it at. C sub U is the cost per item of underestimating demand. So in other words, if I underestimate my demand and I could have sold one more, I've lost the full revenue of that, the full profit of that. So this represents an opportunity lost for not ordering an additional item and finding that it could have been sold. So the optimal order quantity is I want to find the probability that the demand is less than Q star, and that probability is going to be the cost of underestimating divided by, and there should be parentheses here. Let me fix that. No, that's not good. It's not a, here, I'll fix it. Where's my font thing? Font. It's no longer a subscript. There we go. It's the quantity divided by that quantity. CU plus the cost of underestimating demand and cost of having excess stock and not selling that extra. And that's it. That's the whole chapter. I won't go through the summary slides because it's probably already bored you long enough. When you listen to these things, you don't have to listen to it all at once. You can listen to it for 10 minutes at a time. Take a break, come back, and listen to it again. My voice puts you to sleep, take a nap, come back and listen to it again. All right, thank you so much, and we'll talk to you again soon.